In this video, we're going to have a look at how we can use Pinecone's metadata filtering in our searches. So what I mean by metadata is we can have key value pairs. So for example, in the example we will use, we're going to have random vectors, but we're going to assign each one of those a different film genre. So we can have comedies or documentaries. And that is an example of one of our metadata tags for this example. So attached to each one of our vectors is a metadata item called genre, and that value is a string like comedy or drama. But we can also have numeric metadata as well, and even arrays. So there's quite a lot of flexibility when it comes to metadata in Pinecone. Now, metadata in vector search is a very difficult topic because filtering based on metadata whilst also searching through an approximate nearest neighbors index is quite hard. But Pinecone uses something called single stage filtering to make metadata filtering incredibly fast. And in fact, for most of your searches, adding a metadata filter will actually speed up your search. So back to our previous example, if we'd only like to search for similar vectors that belong to the genre comedy, we can do that. And by doing that, we actually make our search faster. So over to Pinecone, we first need to make sure our Pinecone client is installed. We then import Pinecone, make sure you get your API key from here, and you initialize your connection to Pinecone by adding your API key into this argument here. Then what we do is initialize the connection to an index. You obviously need to create an index if you haven't already. And in here, I'm just having a look. Okay, I already have 10,000 vectors in there, but I'll show you how we can upsert some vectors with metadata tags. So here I'm just going to create two random vectors, and I have two IDs as well. And we have this empty metadata list. So I'm going to go ahead and create some metadata. Now, for each vector, our metadata will be contained within a dictionary. So what we're going to do is add a genre. We'll make the first one a comedy. And what we're also going to do is add a date for that comedy. So we'll say this one was released in 2018. Now we have two vectors, so we want to add some more metadata. We'll add genre again. I'm going to say for this one, it can be a drama. And the year we'll say 2021. Now, with this, you don't need to have the same metadata for every single vector. So for example, I could remove year from here, and that's not a problem. But for most indexes, you probably want to try and stay reasonably consistent with the metadata that you're putting in there. So I can run that, and this is our typical upsert code that you've probably seen before, where you have IDs and vectors. Now we have metadata now, so change that to vex. We have metadata, and all we need to do is add that into our zip function. So I'll run this, and you see that we've now upserted two more vectors to our index. So it's very easy to upsert metadata. And let's move on to actually querying that metadata. So I'm going to create a random query here. And just made a note here, this is what our index contains in terms of metadata. And let's first query without any metadata filters. So you see that we return, and I've included the include metadata is true so that we can see what we are returning there. And we have a few. In fact, let me reduce this so we can see a little better. Okay, so return these 3 matches. Now, what we might want to do is say, okay, we have documentary comedy. Maybe we don't want to see any documentaries in there. So what we can do is, if we scroll down here, we have this not equals to filter. So this is using, if you know it, MongoDB's query and projection operators, or it's based on that. It's not the same. But what we can do is take that not equal to, and we add it into a filter parameter. So we add filter. We specify the field that we want to filter by, so genre. And in another dictionary here, we say what is the type of filter we're applying here. So not equals to filter, and we want to say we don't want to see any documentaries. Okay, documentary. And we can run that. Let's see what we get. Okay, so you can now see we're filtering out all those, but there's no more documentaries being returned to us. We'd also say, actually, maybe we only want documentaries. So we could just switch that to equals. And you see that now we're only returning documentaries. Now, what if we decide, okay, we want documentaries, but we only want the most recent ones. So maybe from the past, from 2020 and 2021. Okay, so what we can do is we'll add a comma in there, move on to the next line, and we just write year. And we want to say, okay, where the year is greater than GT. And in here, we want to say, okay, we want 2020, 2021. So we could either put 2019, so we're getting greater than 2019. Or if we come down here, we can also see we have greater than or equal to. So we'll probably use greater than or equals to 2020. Let's see what we return. Okay, so now we're just returning 2020 and 2021 in our year. Now I might also decide, okay, we want to restrict that to a range of years. So what we can do is say, okay, how about greater than or equal to, let's say 2018, but I don't want it to be from 2020 onwards. So I just actually want 2018, 2019. Let's include 2020 as well. We'll just exclude 2021 from that. So we'll say less than 2021. Run this. And now you see that we're restricting our search from 2020 and 2018. So between those 2 years. Okay, so that's it for metadata filtering in Pinecone.